The Emperor has foreseen a new threat rising against him. The Podwans Podcast.
Greetings and salutations, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Podwans Podcast. We're here to talk about the Eye of Sauron right above Luke's head. How you doing today, everyone? How you doing, Luke?
Hey, doing great. A little less than a month till the wedding.
Oh, yeah, you're getting married.
Yeah.
Are you excited?
Yeah, I actually am.
Okay.
Like, it might not seem like it, but I really am. I'm just kind of just ready for the formality to be over. You
Sure.
know?
And the planning and the financial burden of getting married. You should have eloped. I think that's what should have happened.
I really should have.
Yeah,
Really should
you
have.
screwed up there. You screwed up. I'm
I know.
sorry.
Screwed the pooch on that one.
Yeah, Hereth, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Just surviving the week, just trying to get to the end of the school year as an educator. That inevitable grind. You see the days ticking down. Feeling like Acid Andor and an Arcana 5,
Speaking of Narkina 5, did you read Mask of Fear?
No,
I
he
have
hasn't.
the audiobook pulled up.
Yeah, too bad. No, you should read Mask of Fear. It's good to have you, and we do have a very special guest. They have been on the Podwans before, but it's been
Almost a
Luke,
year
how
and a
long has
half.
it been? Yeah.
A year and a half, almost
Trivia?
2 years, because they we cut trivia short. Yes, I know. I was in there, Nick, when Andy Wise Guy mentioned that. So that
Well, no, because
We'll
last time he
eventually
was
come back.
on was him versus JJ last season.
yeah, but that was almost 2 years ago, Harry.
I know.
Fine details be damned. Nick, a codename Fulcrum. How are you doing?
I'm doing better than this conversation.
Good to have you back on,
It's
Nick.
great to be back. It's good to see all your faces. Currently, we'll see in an hour if that's the case. No,
Yeah.
I've missed you. I've missed being on here. I've missed this whole thing. I love it.
The long form content.
I know, and just to be able to get on here and just nerd talk with all of you. And I have read Mask of Fear.
Ooh, yeah, look at that. Okay, let's open with that. How did you feel about the Mask of Fear?
Yeah.
It was intriguing is the word that I would use. Like it was so intriguing that to be able to dive into that time period, just like post Revenge of the Sith, and what's happening with all these characters and what the transitional phase is, because we see time period with like the Bad Batch, we see like certain perspective, but like what is actually happening in the government and happening with Mon and Bale and like how that whole takeover really like transpired.
Yeah, it's a cool, like I'd almost say behind the scenes look at everything else going on, like with the like you said, the Bad Batch Rebels, everything after, the Clone Wars and stuff like that. So yeah, like I think it is this. It's it became one of my favorite Star Wars books just because of like, in the same way that Andor became very impactful, is it's really just drawing from history and all of the stuff that's gone on over the past hundreds of years, and then it just unfortunately feels very relatable to what's going on today.
It read a little bit like a documentary rather than.
I was like, Alexander, when did you write this book exactly?
I mean, and just like Tony Gilroy with Andor is like several years ago when he wrote it, but it feels like it was kind of like a predictor of everything to come. Yeah.
It's a little scary, but I think that's what makes it so impactful at the end of the day. But what we're here to talk about today is the poster you have right behind you.
Heck yes. Oh,
very.
Which side? I don't know. And I wore this shirt in particular because.
I've got my Mos Eisley shirt on. So
I think you mean Hereth and Char. Do not throw me in this. He is he would be an S tier character if I had my way, but he's a B character.
I mean, Mask of Fear really did start to make Mon and Bale even more interesting, and like because like Mon was just like that Return of the Jedi, like Bothan's line, and now one of the most, the character with one of the biggest depth and interest and development that we've seen in a long time.
Yeah, the story of her sacrifice and how that gets even further, examined. Yeah, in Mask of Fear is really good.
I'm really happy that that's a trilogy of books.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see because Rebecca Roanhorse is writing one of them, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
but no, like to your shirt's point, let's stay on target. Damn it. A New Hope is like my favorite Star Wars movie, period. Will probably never change that fact. Like, it was my introduction to Star Wars. Like, before the special editions, I got, we had the VHS tapes and I watched A New Hope. I watched the Trench Run more times than I can possibly imagine. Where does A New Hope sit with all of the TikTok rankings going on right now? Nick, where does A New Hope sit on your list?
That's for me, growing up with the original trilogy, because I was born before Empire came out, not long before, but I was a year old when that came out. So I grew up with the original trilogy. So for me, those are my top three because that was my
Star
life.
Wars.
Phantom Menace didn't come out until I was 19. So my entire development was that original trilogy. So A New Hope for me right now would probably be 2 or 3. Currently, I would say would be 2 or 3 for me. But it's always going to be top 3 is always going to be original trilogy. That's just.
I'm almost in the same boat. I have a lot of gripes with Return of the Jedi. It's my least favorite of the originals, and it's also one of my least favorite Star Wars movies. Most of that has to do with the battle on Andor. But like the battle above Andor and the second Death Star is peak Star Wars. Like it is so good and so well done. But for me, I think it's just the origins of Star Wars, kind of come from A New Hope or just Star Wars, like watching the like what Canadian Nick said, the originals are better than the special editions, and I very much hold that true, with maybe the exception of Empire Strikes Back.
Yes,
that special edition feels like it just expands softly the original, whereas there's a lot of like you get more of the Wampa, you get more like B-roll of Bespin and stuff like that, and it's like that's fine. I don't mind that.
And you get like stuff like Ian McDermott and like Tamora Morrison's voice being now.
Sure, that's like that, but that's even like special edition. Like,
yeah, they didn't start that until after the prequels.
That's a lot of George fuckery right there.
That was the DVD release.
Yeah, like I like for me, it was just like A New Hope. From Tatooine to the Death Star to Yavin, like, is just this perfect journey. Like I've always said, like you actually don't need anything past that. It ends so conclusively. Like the Death Star is destroyed, the Empire is defeated. Congratulations, everyone got their medals except for Chewie. But we now have so much more to build up to this movie, and I think we're like in this. I feel like it's like an almost a golden age for the original trilogy, like this resurgence of the original trilogy, because Rogue One obviously flows seamlessly into A New Hope, and it does it beautifully. Like that, like was the most emotional thing for me was watching Rogue One for the first time in the theaters, and seeing the Tantive 4 light up, and you're like, oh God, they're here. Like this is what is all building towards. And then with Andor season 2. Leading up to Cassian leave to go to the Rings of Kafrene. I made a video on this, and I'm curious about like how you guys feel, but like I look at this like Andor season 1, season 2, Rogue One, and A New Hope as its own saga. Like this is its own contained story that you could show someone everything, and that's its own story, and you could be totally set with that.
I think you are correct. In that sentiment, it makes sense for Star Wars to be like that, because if you think about it, mostly Star Wars has been trilogies. If you think about it, I mean, look at Andor season 2. It has 3 cohesive, or is it 4 cohesive stories?
It's 4 cohesive,
Four.
4 arcs.
It's 4, but like it's multiple seasons, and so I could see that. Gosh, I think the only gripe I have with the original cut is the Vader stuff. It bothered me so much.
Luke is
it's
the only person that said this.
Weird.
It's
so weird.
That's how Darth Vader has, like, to me, and I don't know, because Nick and I are, I think, the only two that really grew up, and Nick definitely grew up more than that, because I was born in '88, like after Return of the Jedi, but way before Phantom Menace.
Yeah. What does it feel like to be young?
After riding across the state of Washington, it feels awful. My right knee doesn't work and my back cannot bend at all. Like, I have been in this chair all day. But I've always felt like I'm in this weird thing where, like, I was the right age for Anakin, like, growing up. Like, I was a little bit older than Jake Lloyd when the Phantom Menace came out, but about his age during Attack of the Clones. So I always felt like that Luke was my character because I grew up wanting to be Luke. Like, Luke was something to aspire to be, whereas Anakin was like, I'm Anakin's age. I wouldn't make the same decisions that Anakin was making. Which, that's not the point of the prequels, but, like, Luke was always my guy. Like, it was like Star Wars to me was Luke, Han, and Leia, the TIE fighters versus the X-Wings, the Empire versus the Rebellion. Like, that's always been Star Wars to me. And I loved the prequels when they came out because they were so cool. They were so fantastical. They expanded Star Wars so much. But I was always like, even like when Revenge of the Sith came out, I was like, they didn't talk about the Rebellion. Not once.
I mean, they did, but they cut it.
Freaking deleted.
Because it's too political.
But now that we have the 2 completed seasons of Andor, Rogue One, and A New Hope, like, rewatching A New Hope, I think that there's some things that hit differently and there's things that hit harder. I know a lot of people have been kind of making fun of the end medal scene and how it's just like when you have all the context of Cassian and Luthen and Bix and Jyn, it's like, you give Han and Luke the medals? Okay.
But I do kind of like raise a complaint to that complaint because it's like everyone's like, well, why didn't they get the credit and and I'm like, the Rebellion has never been about credit.
Right.
That's the Empire. That's what we see in Andor. They're kicking each other to get credit and like get glory from it. Look at Dedra as a character. All she cares about is the glory of I'm the one who took up the Rebel Alliance. They don't care. Yeah,
I agree. Because
so also with the metal scene though, but like there's so much we haven't seen with the Rebellion, right? We don't know what other kind of ceremonies they've had, or like we don't have that context. That context is only within like the Death Star being destroyed and Princess Leia having been rescued. That is the context of that ceremony.
Yeah, like when I was rewatching it yesterday and we got to the metal scene, I'm just like, like the reality is like Luke and Han blew up the Death Star. Like, all of the work was meant to do that. And it's like, yes, they were the ones that crossed the finish line. Yes, the baton was passed multiple times to get them to the finish line. But at the same time, like it's a relay race, right? The person who finishes at the finish line is usually the person that gets the most recognition. And I didn't have an issue with it. I think it's funny that people are bringing it up, but I will say this: watching the Death Star explode feels so much more emotional this time around with everything in context.
It's so much more gratifying, and it's not even and Andor isn't the only show that has its fingerprints on even the original trilogy. Like, with the added addition of Obi-Wan Kenobi, like the moment when Luke says, "Oh, I'm with Ben Kenobi," and Leia just is like, "Oh, Ben Kenobi," like she knows that from the other context that we get from these 2 shows. It makes the interactions with characters so much more worth it. Because it's like at the end of Kenobi, he's like, then my friend is truly dead, Darth. And then all Obi-Wan says to Vader is, you're a master of evil, Darth. He just mentions Darth. He's like, at this point, it's completely gone. But like also with Andor, like I find it really weird that people want to be like, well, Luthen is the number one reason. It's like that's not the point. Like the whole point is that his sacrifice gave the rebellion a chance to get the win. Like, but can we just say that they all made a difference in the cause?
Yeah. I was gonna say that because, like, not to echo Chris, but I agree with Chris's video where it's like, why are we trying to credit like one person to the rebellion? They're all like an equal cog in the machine.
Yeah, absolutely. It takes a family to kind of bring it all together, and it takes the teamwork. Like in regular life, you have to work as a team to get success, and that's what happened here.
When it comes to blowing up the Death Star, and then the last like 3 episodes of Andor and Rogue One, it's amazing how if any one of those chess pieces was not in position, whether it be any one of the factors, any one of the people had not contributed the way they did, the Death Star would never have been blown up.
They would have all died on Yavin.
It's this hanging by a thread.
I love this. Is what I've loved about Rogue One and especially Andor is this like very beautiful butterfly effect that they have started to build out of, and this isn't to dog on the prequel trilogy, but this to me is how a really good prequel story is told, is to build the beautiful butterfly effect. Because it's like, it comes down to, if Cyril Karn would have just listened to his boss, none of this would have happened. Like, it comes down to these very small, minute details. And it's these, like you said, it's these fine threads that culminated to that moment of Luke firing the proton torpedoes down the Death Star. And also, big shout out to Obi-Wan Kenobi for the $2 donation. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Hereth is the face of the Podwans. Look at that. Well, $2 is $2. Congratulations, Hereth. You're the face of Podwans.
Look, I mean, I get where he's coming from, because I was on a stream and only Luke and Char's voice were because of the Battlefront stream. So, from a certain point of view, he's right.
I mean, as the years go by, you're looking more and more like Obi-Wan. So you get.
I have a problem with that one.
I mean,
Luke wants to be.
I think the two Obi-Wans are going to have to battle it out. Yeah.
Well, oh no!
You know, in
the hero style at Luke's wedding.
Oh God. Anyway,
there's one thing that I did really love watching A New Hope again. There's actually a bunch of things that it's one of those things, like, it was already my favorite, but so many things with Andor and Rogue One have boosted it further to the top. Because like my top 3 has, since Rogue One came out, has been A New Hope, Rogue One, and Empire. Like, those are like my movies.
Like different order. Yeah.
Like that chain of movies is just so good. But with Andor, and even when we look at looking at the Force is never mentioned, or like, I think we get a "May the Force be with you" in season 1, and I could be wrong on that. And that's about it.
I don't think we do.
I think the first.
I think the only Force stops are. I think the only Force thing that is ever mentioned is in season 2.
Yeah, because like, it is not mentioned at all. If, like I said, like, there's one small mention, maybe even from Marva, if I remember correctly, but I could be wrong, in season 1. Season 2, you get this very small
portion of it.
Small portion of like, okay, the Force is here. There's something bigger in the galaxy. And then you get to Rogue One and you get characters like Chirrut and Baze. And you start to, when you get to Jedha and you understand, like, okay, this Force thing is much bigger. And then you meet Obi-Wan Kenobi in A New Hope, and then you get the lightsaber. And I think that this like build up towards the Force from Andor season 1 to A New Hope is this like beautiful staircase that like leads you up to this big galaxy of the Jedi and the Force. And I think it's just one of those things, like, I'm sure that it was very cleverly constructed this way from like Tony Gilroy and like the team that worked on Andor and Rogue One, but it's just one of those things, like, watching it again is like, all of these little hints going into the Force from Andor, Rogue One into A New Hope, it just culminates into into Obi-Wan's hut. Basically, is when we see that lightsaber ignite and him telling us about how the Force works.
And I feel like we talked about this on the Rogue One episode. Like, people were complaining about, like, oh, Vader shouldn't have been Rogue One. But I feel like it kind of enhances your theory of, like, Andor starts super, very small. It's just the corporate side. And then we slowly start getting bigger. By the end of season 1, we finally get Stormtroopers. Season 2, we finally get the ISB at full force. And then Gorman. And then the KX droids. And then we get the hints of Vader. Then Rogue One, it's Vader, the Death Troopers, all that. Then A New Hope, it's the entire Empire outside of Palpatine. And then you watch the staircase get higher and higher when you get to Return of the Jedi. It just naturally builds.
Yeah, like there's a lot of scenes that really impacted me this time around. I'm curious about you guys, if there's any scenes rewatching it now that are like, oof, that hits harder or that hits different in any way.
To me, the two we already mentioned was obviously like the ceremony at the end, Battle of Yavin, and Leia, obviously, because Kenobi. But like the one that hits different for me is the like Tarkin's introduction with Vader and like them talking about like the Imperial Senate's now like folded inwards because of like what's happening with Leia right now. And it's like obviously now we know that the context of Andor, like obviously through like Star Wars media, we know that like the Senate just is slowly losing more importance because the Empire is just starting to take over, and like the importance of like individual senators is just being lost because obviously Star Wars fascism. What? One voice is starting to dominate the scene anyway. But like I really like how with Andor, it's like, oh, now we see that decline because of Mon's action to speak out against Palpatine, and how this sparks everything that we see. And then A New Hope, it's Palpatine just slams the door shut as soon as the rebellion starts to get power. It's like, nope, we are not letting them get a voice in the Senate anymore because we saw what happened after that.
Yeah.
So I think that is the reason why it hits so different.
And like, no, go ahead, Luke.
No, I was just gonna say, like, seeing Mon's speech and then realizing that it's not that much longer later that the Senate is around.
Yeah. Like when you think of how quickly it all happens, like the end of Andor, like, and the start of A New Hope is a year. Well, I guess from Mon Mothma's speech, right?
Yeah,
Mon Mothma's speech.
About a year out or so.
Yeah, like let's say 18 months max, right? Like that's kind of wild to think about, is that her speech and departure from the Senate directly led about a year later to the full dissolvement of the Imperial Senate. And then all, Tarkin's, monologue, the government's taking full control over the systems, and that the Death Star will now be the ultimate force of ruling law in the galaxy. And it is like, I think we've seen that in history so many times as well, which is really hard to grasp sometimes, how quickly these things, snowball out of control, until like things are dealt with in one way or the other. And, we've seen it, in recent history, we've seen it, we're seeing it today, and we've also seen it, even 100 years ago. Mm-hmm. And this, to me, just like watching A New Hope this time with all the context of Andor, it felt like a much more politically charged movie than it used to be. Mm-hmm. I think even with Luke, one of the things that stood out to me was Luke, when he's like cleaning C-3PO and R2-D2, and, C-3PO mentions he's with the rebellion, which I thought was kind of funny. Like rewatching it, where I was like, he just like openly says, like, "Yeah, we're with the rebellion, man."
Like C-3PO, what the fuck are you doing, bro? Yeah, like what the hell?
Like
you don't know who this is.
Even in the context of A New Hope, like if you watch all the deleted scenes, that's crazy, because if you watch the Biggs and Luke deleted scene, like when Luke openly mentions when Biggs is like, "Oh, I'm going to defect and I'm going to like join the rebellion," Luke's like, "The rebellion," and Biggs is like, "Shut up!" Like it's crazy to even think in A New Hope that C-3PO is so open about it, because like in other scenes in A New Hope, they're not even that open with it.
Yeah, but I mean,
he says what with the rebellion at all? It's. He wasn't exactly admitting to everything. So like,
sure, he's not like I was on the Tantive 5 that had the plans for the Death Star. The what? Tell me more.
No idea. He had no idea.
Yeah.
But no, like it like seeing there was something that like, and this is very headcanon-y, but like seeing Luke get perk up because he heard the rebellion, and like knowing that he probably has heard stories of someone like Cassian, like Bix
in the spaceports, and
like when he goes to Tashi Station, word travels fast, right? And that he probably maybe he doesn't know about Cassian or Mon Mothma. He probably knows about Mon Mothma leaving the Senate. Like that's not crazy to think about that. Like
he probably knows about Nemec's manifesto to some degree, because remember in Andor they talk about like how it's starting to spread wide and fast.
I mean,
it's at the same, probably heard it.
It's at the same time of Ezra's broadcast as well, because remember that broadcast scattered over millions of sectors in the galaxy as well. So I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility that he's heard of the rebellion before.
Well, he's heard of it. Like when C-3PO mentions the rebellion, Luke very much comes to attention. Like, oh, you know about the rebellion, and once everything happens, when the Empire goes after Beru and Owen, like he says like, I want to join the rebellion. I want to learn the ways of the Force and join the rebellion. Like he very much knows what's going on.
Well, to even support
to some extent
of like the Nemec thing, it's like what Sean said. Like I always joke about this for a couple of years before Andor of like, it's like I even blew my dad's mind when Luke's like, oh, I'm gonna join the academy, and I was like, yeah, he's talking about the Imperial Academy, but I was like, no way. I'm like, yeah, no, he was gonna join the Empire originally. I think now, if we look at it through the Andor lens of things, he probably heard some of Nemec's manifesto and kind of started to change heel a little bit of like, maybe not the Imperial Academy, and then maybe when Biggs defected, that's kind of shifted him to join the rebellion.
Not to shit on this, but C-3PO had his mind wiped. He had no idea who Obi-Wan was.
R2 did.
No idea.
Yeah.
R2 definitely did.
And Obi-Wan knew who R2 was.
R2 was. And I love that because it's from the certain point of view with Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon. Mm-hmm. When Qui-Gon visits him,
which I listened to before jumping on here.
It's one of my favorite stories. I love that in between. But I think the scene that resonates with me most has to be the duel between Obi-Wan and Vader for the last time, because of just the added context of everything going on with obviously episode 3 and then their second duel in Kenobi, and then everything that happens in that show. It gives you a different light about that character, right? Because he starts in the show, he's like still broken down and everything, and then we get to this point where he's an old man. He knows pretty much everything that's going to happen. He's come to terms with it, and he knows what he has to do. He knows exactly when they get captured on the Death Star. He knows, all right, this is going to be the final time. Might as well get this over with. And he does it because he knows it's the only way that they're going to escape. If he doesn't delay Vader, they all probably die. Mm-hmm. And it's a small little thing that I think a lot of people glance over, but it's a very important part in just not only the movie but the rest of the saga as well.
For me, first of all, there is a canon book where Obi-Wan is on the Millennium Falcon and says like, "Nice to see your old friend R2-D2." Yes. So there's acknowledgement there. One of the things that's still processing for me is at the end of A New Hope, after having watched Andor, both seasons, is the fact that on the Yavin base, it had only been just a few days since the battle at Scarif. And like they've had their first major battle, and like this is the rebellion. This is their first time the rebellion has really come together to do something like that, as opposed to like the different cells like Phoenix Squadron and stuff like that. And like they had a win, but like Princess Leia went off with the plans, and then suddenly she was captured, and like what happened there? Like they had been through so much in the last few days. Like Radiss's ship had been destroyed, and Blue Squadron had been wiped out because of it, and like so much had happened, and they lost so many of their people, and then suddenly it's like, hey, let's get into a few X-wings and Y-wings and try to go blow up this huge station now.
Well, I see. I really like that because I think that also harkens back to Rogue One with, the memory of Jyn Erso. Like, what chance do we have? What choice do we have? Like, the Death Star is coming. If we don't send these X-wings and Y-wings out, this planet killer will be we know what it did to Jedha and Scarif and now Alderaan. We know that it can completely destroy a planet, not just part of it. It's like, what else are they going to do? And I think that again adds so much weight to the Battle of Yavin. Like, I was thinking that too, like
a few days before.
Yeah, like the Battle of Scarif was like yesterday, like essentially. Like we don't have like a specific like day, week, or month timeline, but we can assume that like what happens when Amperu and Uncle Owen die, we can assume is either during the Battle of Scarif or a week before.
I always assumed it's been like a couple of days to 3 days, because like if you kind of like watch A New Hope literally and just kind of assume time passes naturally for everybody, it's 2 or 3 days.
But it's kind of tough to like gauge the time because different planets are on different gravitational rotations.
But so like Leia is still in the same outfit with the same hair that we see her in tandem. So like not a lot of time. We can assume a week or less has passed since the Battle of Scarif and the Battle of Yavin starts. Which like is crazy. And it's like, again, it's just like, to me, the Battle of Yavin, and why I personally love the fact that we gauge everything in time off of the Battle of Yavin, because it is like the most important piece of timeline in Star Wars. But like, I even looking at like, I think there's, there are some really cool shots that have been used in the special editions for the Battle of Yavin, and there's like lots of, lots more cleaner effects and stuff like that. But watching like the original Battle of Yavin, like there's a little bit of nostalgia there, but it is, to me personally, the perfect scene. Like, it is my favorite scene in all of Star Wars. Like the trench run is, I know that a new generation will disagree with me. Like the trench run is the most iconic thing in Star Wars to me. Like everything from them going across the Death Star to in the Death Star to Han coming down and like Vader spinning out of control, and the music, the score going off, like all of it is just, to me, like that is the peak of Star Wars. And I know a lot of people will say like Battle of Heroes with Obi-Wan and Anakin now is like the peak.
No, I would say the Revelation in Empire is probably like that lightsaber duel. I feel like it's
my favorite. It's my favorite lightsaber duel.
If you would have asked Kid me, I probably would have said Luke and Vader: Return of the Jedi.
Luke and Vader: Return of the Jedi is fun. But I kind of have to agree with Chase though. Like,
no, I don't disagree with Chase at all.
It's definitely top 3.
So for me, lightsaber battles are more about the story and the drama than about the actual battle themselves. So that's really what I gauge things by more than the actual like lightsaber technique. I think that's a lot less important in the storytelling element. So like, it's really kind of what hits home for me, and what I feel like really does a great job in telling a story during that moment.
I agree, and that's why my 2 favorite lightsaber duels are both Luke and Vader. Like, my favorite one is an Empire, and my second favorite one is Return of the Jedi. Like, I think that there's other ones in there, and I think that there's others like outside of the movie, like the final battle with Kenobi and Maul on Tatooine, like is just like beautiful.
Especially from a story standpoint too, like Nick was saying. And I mean, even the duel in this film, I think
Obi-Wan and Vader is so good.
It's very underrated. It's very underrated.
I've been waiting to go on this rant for forever.
Are you about to talk about the YouTube video?
No, it's the dumbest thing ever. It's the
I'm with you on this. You go for it. I'm gonna
because like I've seen like fan edits where people try to edit it back into A New Hope, and it just doesn't work.
It doesn't work. They're
tells the wrong
too
story.
old. They're too old. They're too old. They don't need to be doing this. That's the whole point.
Not even just they're too old. Like if you look at it from a technicality standpoint, I'm sorry. You're watching a movie from 1977. Like I know people bitch about the special edition, the CGI and the special edition. Watching that in A New Hope is weird because you're watching camera angles that don't exist. Like like okay, they're shooting this with digital cameras. Obviously, it's a fan film, but like watching it and then cutting to Luke, Han, and Leia, where like the camera is on
jarring.
film and it's jarring as hell.
Yeah,
well, here's my thing with it is that they missed the entire point of that entire duel. It was never a duel to begin with. Like that was not the point. Like yeah, they have their lightsabers out, but it was just between two people. And like at no point in time was Obi-Wan not in control of that entire thing. Like he turns Vader around, he leads Vader down he leads Vader away, and like he is in charge that entire time. Like he shows that he is still the master. Just like
most of the other two fights that he was in. Really?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I
mean,
even
like, I know you, Anakin. I know what you're about.
Exactly. It's and here's another thing that I think about often after watching this movie. Do I think Obi-Wan knows that this is it even before they leave Tatooine? Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely he does, because he does talk to Qui-Gon when Luke leaves to go find Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru, which, by the way, thanks to Kenobi, makes those two characters even more those deaths even more like hard.
Funny enough, post Kenobi, like I read it before Kenobi, and then I read it obviously before we just got on here, and like there's a line where it's like talking about Qui-Gon. Like obviously we knew that canonically it was like a decade at that point, still even before Kenobi. But like the line of like I've been talking to Qui-Gon for a decade now, like it hits harder because of Kenobi,
of what he was struggling with in that show and not being able to connect with Qui-Gon. But
and then little lines like when he saw Leia, it's like it reminded him of Padme, and then like that kind of stuff. You're just like, God damn, Claudia Gray is just such a writer. She just stabs you in the heart.
With from a certain point of view, like Qui-Gon, obviously when he was talking to Obi-Wan like that day, like knew what was about to happen to Obi-Wan. Exactly. Right? Like Obi-Wan had a sense of something going on, but like not necessarily the end for him. Although it's what he'd been training for, you know. It's like it's why he'd been training this way, so he could be so he could be that that for Luke. But yeah, so I mean he had like Obi-Wan had a sense, but yeah.
Yeah, I think he knew at that time. He was like, all right, I know, because in that small excerpt, like in that story, Qui-Gon kind of prepares him for it. He's like, you know what you have to do.
But there's also a line at the end of the excerpt. It's like Qui-Gon's like, I'll see you again, and then Obi-Wan's like, I will, and then Qui-Gon was gonna say, we will, like in death, but he was like, oh, no, I can't say that yet.
Yeah, because I mean, it's so funny to see how Force ghosts like manipulate events.
I think Obi-Wan knew as soon as he was going to need to confront Vader.
Exactly.
I mean, that's not canonical, but I think he knew that.
Well, I think not even canonical.
I think it makes sense.
I think it's when they see the Death Star, he's like he just knows immediately, like, yep, Anakin's going to be there. Here we go.
Well, I think it's kind of because he can sense Vader as well.
Yeah.
Because Vader does the I haven't felt this presence since, and then walks away. Like it's just small. It's just small
away from the officer.
Yeah. It's just so funny because he's like, I'm not gonna finish my thought because you don't need to know it.
I saw a really dumb take on that scene recently on Threads where people were like, "Oh, he's talking about Luke and Leia." I'm like, it's always been Obi-Wan. He said that to Tarkin.
It's always been Obi-Wan.
Can we also talk about how Obi-Wan is like the king of abilities and techniques that are used once and only once ever?
Yes.
Like force speed, face changing technology, disappearing after a lightsaber hits you. Like, this stuff is never used again in the franchise ever. I think it's hilarious. And Obi-Wan gets all the coolest one-time tricks, and they just never show up again.
The one thing I did like about the original cut is like the elongated that scene, because you can hear the stormtroopers actually talking to each other, whereas in like the special editions, special editions, there's a little bit of conversation, but there's more like background music playing to kind of cover up that scene. And I enjoyed it because it was like, it was just random guys, like they just fed them lines like, hey, bullshit, talk about a car engine and we'll make it sound like Star Wars, you know? And so that was kind of interesting. But no, like, yeah, they did really have a lot of Force things in there that they never touched again.
Yeah, like I very much appreciate the Alec Guinness Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like, there's that like sage-like presence that Alec Guinness gives off that I've always like fully enjoyed. And I think, to your point, like the transition from the Kenobi show to A New Hope, and I do like that so many things in Star Wars recently have just been expanding A New Hope specifically.
Yeah.
Empire and Jedi be damned. It's all about A New Hope.
I mean, I would disagree with that. I think there are some of the shows that are expanding on the original trilogy. Specifically,
I would say the early era of Disney, like the Disney acquisition, I hate saying that, was more focused on Return of the Jedi. And with like Mandalorian and like Force Awakens, and then like the like trilogy and stuff, and then it became, after Rogue One, it became more New Hope focused.
I would disagree, because I don't think that The Mandalorian or Book of Boba Fett expand upon the story of Return of the Jedi in any meaningful way, whereas Andor, Kenobi, Rogue One, and even parts of Solo expand on A New Hope in very meaningful ways.
Well, yeah, and I also think that Obi-Wan does for Return of the Jedi as well. Because, I mean, the whole basis of that show is that conversation between Luke and Vader in that hallway. Like, that show makes that line make so much more sense. Mm-hmm. And it does enhance, like I said earlier, about Leia saying Ben. And also, like, it's the stuff that it does enhance, but I feel like Andor does that for A New Hope specifically. I would agree with that, but I would say Obi-Wan does it for a lot of the original trilogy, not just A New Hope.
Can I just say that I think the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, people are gonna love it a lot more later on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like going back and watching it, I'm like, I really enjoy it. What? like
okay.
The nitpicking that they did for like the prequels, I think it's gonna have a similar effect. Maybe not to the extent, but like. But I see Chase. Go Chase.
I've been thinking about exactly that recently.
Yeah.
I could be so off base here, but I think that with this new generation of Star Wars, I think the prequels are going through a renaissance right now. I think they will fall back out of favor with the new generation, because I think the prequels and the Clone Wars are so disconnected from everything that Disney has done onwards. Like, yes, they did like the Bad Batch and they did like Clone Wars season 7, but I feel like their live action like stuff has been like, let's be real, Kenobi is more about A New Hope than it is about Revenge of the Sith.
Yes.
And I think that with things like Andor and Rogue One and Solo, these have been focusing on things like the Death Star. And I think that when you look at the sequel trilogy, say what you will about it, it's the Resistance versus the First Order, which is the Rebellion versus the Empire. It's X-Wings and TIE Fighters. It's Luke, Han, and Leia. And it is a new trilogy of characters that are supposed to resemble Luke, Han, and Leia. And I personally feel that the next generation of Star Wars fans will watch everything in its entirety and feel like the Clone Wars and the prequels feel a little bit disjointed from everything else. Not that they're not good, but it's just like, I was thinking specifically, if you showed someone episodes 4 through 9 and never showed them 1 through 3, how would they feel about the prequel? How would they feel about the sequels?
I feel like that's fair, and especially because when you mention it, you have two entities that are so morally good and bad, whereas we have added context with the Clone Wars in seeing that, maybe the Separatists weren't wrong, but like they didn't help themselves. But it's also more like that conflict is so much more complex than what we get in the original trilogy and even the sequel trilogy, because there's more moving parts to it. It was more like with that story, with the prequels, it was more of like, hey, we're trying to tell a bigger story than just good and evil. We're trying to show how corruption starts things, everything like that. And I think that's why it feels so disjointed from everything else. It's because it's trying to tell you more than just your ground-based good and evil.
And I feel like, going to your point, like what Chase was saying, like how the prequels, like Renaissance is probably coming to an end soon. I feel like we'll see the end of that Renaissance by the time of, I know people are saying it's not going to happen, but I think New Jedi Order, no, not even New Jedi Order, Starfighter is going to be the beginning of that. Like when we start getting that post-9 content, and like, because I feel like, obviously I was 13 when Force Awakens came out, so obviously now I'm 23. I feel like by the time of Starfighter, the people that were like preteens to teenagers are going to be adults, and they're going to finally be in the fandom, and they're going to be active, and they're going to have that voice to be like, fuck you. No, the sequels are actually good movies. And I feel like, and then I think inside that Renaissance, I think you're right. I think The Mandalorian, Andor, even though Andor's not going to really go through a Renaissance, I'm just throwing it in there. And the sequel era / the Disney Plus era, I'm just kind of combining them, because I feel like Mandalorian and Kenobi and Andor are going to be in there as well in that discourse.
Yeah, I think that like there are things like Andor and the Mandalorian that won't need a renaissance. They just stand up on their own very, very well. Mm-hmm. You have things like Kenobi that were divisive. You have things like the Acolyte that were divisive, that I think will get their own renaissances. I think the sequels are still due for a renaissance. I do think it is on Disney and Lucasfilm to give us that Clone Wars-esque treatment for the sequels, because when I look at the original trilogy, when I look at the prequel trilogy, and then the sequel trilogy, it's not like the sequel trilogy, really and truly left characters alone and off, like with missing context, any more than the originals did, or any more than the prequels did. Like if we look what happened to Padme, we look what happens to Han. Like these are characters that are more or less sidelined in their trilogies, and I think it's like, When I go back to the books that I was reading after Return of the Jedi, and it's like these were adding all the context to Luke, Han, and Leia, like the Han Solo trilogy, I make the joke every time, I know, but like the insane amount of books of Luke Skywalker doing backflips over stormtroopers, like that was my context, and then the Next Generation got the Clone Wars, and the sequels need their Clone Wars. They need their post Return of the Jedi. They need their New Jedi Order.
They need to
show or something like that.
The problem with that, though, is that not the problem. I think they're trying to do this with Mando. I think they're trying to set the seeds. Obviously, with season 3 bringing up the remnants of the Empire. Obviously, the Aftermath trilogy touches on this conflict a little bit. But I agree, they need to have more visual media explain what is going on in the back end, because I feel like we start like the books specifically. Bloodline does a really good job with setting up the conflict in the sequels. Aftermath does a great job. Shadows of the Sith does a great job of setting up backstories and everything like that. Resistance, to a degree, does a good job.
Freefall book today.
Well, there you go. Yeah, Poe's story. It's like I think we will get that content, but it's so hard because it's like you don't have an established conflict up until that time. You know what I mean?
And I feel like we're so close to it happening, because I feel like I don't know if I'm going to get pushed back for this. I feel like the Mandoverse is almost over. I think Mandalorian and Grogu, Ahsoka season 2, and then I think we're going straight into Days movie. I think after Days movie, it's pretty much we're done. Like I think it's.
Why? I
think
hope
that
so.
will, and I think the ending scene of Days movie will lead perfectly into the sequels. It's gonna be something with the First Order or the Final Order or something, and then it's gonna be like, oh shit, there's your little. Rise Skywalker Force Awakens setup. There you go.
We got that taste of it with the Praetorian Guards,
which
already
you mentioned that. I remember during Celebration 22, Nick came up to me and was like, I've seen a leak for Mando, and I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, there's sequel era stuff, there's First Order stuff. I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, because I've seen some stuff. And now after Mando season 3, I'm like, oh yeah, it's Praetorian Guards.
Go ahead, Nick.
No, so I mean, post prequels, like you had some books and stuff like that, but it really wasn't until Clone Wars that started to expand on that and kind of like change over people's mindsets towards it, and that it took years for that to really really come into fruition. But like for the sequels for Disney, like you've had like the sequels came out, it was a bit of a hot potato for them now, and so they've been like, besides the Resistance show and a few books, they've pretty much kind of been avoiding it for a little bit. And I feel like, in having bided their time now with like a Rey movie and Starfighter, I think they're gonna possibly start to kind of expand more into that. I don't know how much setup we're gonna get before. I mean, I think we need it. I think it would drastically help, because all we have are comics really, and a few books that are vague towards it. But like a post era, I think will really bring that back. And like, if you see a Rey's character having gone somewhere and doing something, I think that could drastically help. I would love to have Finn back.
Sure.
Book that's going to be coming out in October. With him and Janna. I think that has the perfect opportunity to give us some backstory on both of those characters. Much needed.
I was fortunate enough to see John Boyega talk at Emerald City Comic Con, and he made a statement that was basically he wants to come back. He just hasn't received the phone call, which that could just be Disney PR speak, right?
I feel like I've heard that PR speak like a billion times with you and Daisy Ridley.
So it's one of those things like, I think the whole John Boyega hates Disney narrative, I think, is kind of coming to a close. I don't think that's the case. I think, it's just one of those things like, yeah, sure. I think any actor is entitled to feel a certain way about the movies there, in the same way that Alec Guinness and Harrison Ford were certainly entitled to feel their own way about the original trilogy.
It feels like more like a fandom menace type bullshit, like kind of like how the people versus George Lucas is kind of like framed, like the people around Star Wars are the real reason why Star Wars is like the way it is, and it's in spite of George. It's kind of like, it feels like that is the modern era version of it. It's John Boyega and Mark Hamill hate Disney Star Wars, and they're never gonna come back.
Yeah, I think you're right to an extent. I mean, I genuinely wouldn't blame John Boyega for saying some of the things he did. It's like, I was hoping my character would have a bigger piece. He clearly had a different mentality than Harrison Ford did going into his role, and he's totally entitled to that. But I think it's over time, you can reflect and change your opinions on that.
100%. Like I think he has perfect grievances for what he talks about, and it's like I would love to have those conversations with the fandom at large, but it's like we're not at that maturity level. The same way Harrison Ford had grievances with Return of the Jedi, and how he felt like he wanted to get killed off in Return of the Jedi because he felt like his character didn't serve any purpose. It's the same thing. It's not even like, oh, I want to get killed off thing, but it's like I wish that we went in a slightly different direction with Finn, we never get the chance to tell that story. And JJ had a different idea of it. Yeah.
So I saw a TikTok of another podcast talking about how they should have used the Duel of the Fates script. And
I disagree.
To be honest, I've read that script. Parts of it were cool, like specifically the stuff with Finn. I would have been okay with that, but the story itself is so disjointed and it doesn't make sense.
Oh, it's worse than Rise.
If we would have gotten that, people would have looked at at Rise of Skywalker being like, okay,
But that happens with everything, right? What would a Revenge of the Jedi looked like?
George Lucas's write-up for the sequels is better.
Like Gary Kurtz's vision of Return of the Jedi. You're talking about a better movie than what Lucas would have done.
That's what's so frustrating for me. Being like a very much original trilogy, I would never say purist, but like original trilogy is just my favorite. Like, I like this whole thing is more or less been about A New Hope, and I'm like, I can jokingly say like Star Wars peaked with A New Hope. You don't need anything else after that. But I love everything else that has come since A New Hope. But like what you guys were talking about when we were watching is like the Marsha Lucas edit. Like, well, what would George's edit looked like? We'll never see that, and it's like it probably wouldn't have been good. In the same way that like my biggest thing, I have the world's and beyond respect for George Lucas and what he's done. To the media landscape as whole, and like if it wasn't for George, we wouldn't be here talking today. Like
no, absolutely.
Always have respect for George Lucas and everything he's done. But there's like part of me that is like when people complain about anything Star Wars, whether that's the prequels, the sequels, Andor, Acolyte, I don't care. It's just like George has always been in an uphill battle, with Star Wars. Whether it was going from the original Star Wars to The Empire Strikes Back, or going from the originals to the prequels, and it's just like you said, like I don't think people would have liked his sequel trilogy. I think that the reaction probably may have been worse. Like it was just like this guy we gave him 6 opportunities to make it right, and he kept screwing it up, on every turn.
Well, it also goes back to go ahead, Nick.
So to be fair to George, he says that he's not a good writer. He says that in interviews. He's like, I'm not a good writer. I just, it's just I have the ideas. So, but
yeah, he is the ideas guy, 100%.
Yeah, it's tough because it's like, oh, George wouldn't approve of it. It's like George sold the motherfucking company, bro. Like he doesn't care what you have to say, and it brings up a good point about fandoms, right? We're seeing this with A Song of Ice and Fire. George R.R. Martin had a blog post where he was like, I see everything that you guys do. I'm so old. You're not going to get these books. It doesn't matter. And it's so sad to see a creator. I almost applaud George R.R. Martin for speaking out, because a lot of these creators they don't care, but he cares so much about what he created that it's literally killing him. And that's the sad part, to know that George probably, and let's be honest here, George probably didn't give a shit about what any of us thought about the prequels. He made those movies for him, and they made money.
12-year-olds.
Yeah, he made those movies for me, because that's the age range that I was when the prequels were coming out.
He specifically said, "I made him for Luke."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Luke.
Thanks,
George. All for Luke.
Thanks.
No,
it's thanks to you.
And then like J.J. Abrams looked into the camera and said, "We're making the sequel trilogy for specifically Hereth Productions of the Pod Ones podcast."
Yeah, it's just so sad.
It is, but I think it's also important to understand that George Lucas is still on set for most of these productions. Like he's there hanging out. Like he loves it. He's having a great time. He's like, I don't have to do anything. I just my investments in Disney stock are working out great. Yeah, like
and
it's like
turn this conversation back around to Andor and Rogue One, even though it's more Rogue One focused. Like Tony Gilroy brought up again that like after Rogue One finished and Disney showed Lucas a screening of Rogue One, he had like a 2-hour conversation with Tony Gilroy being like, man, I love your movie. Like this is why this is so amazing. So it's like Lucas is a fan just like any of us at this point in time.
Yeah,
he doesn't really care.
He likes it, and like I've got a friend that works for Lucasfilm, or I should say is contracted by Lucasfilm, and it's just like he has his opinions on, like, oh, I like this more than I like that. I like that more than I like this. And it's like, yeah, that's normal. like being, I can joke and say that everything is a 10 out of 10 when it comes to Star Wars, but like, yeah, like I don't like Ahsoka as much as I like Andor, like not even close. Like I liked Ahsoka, I liked Acolyte. They're not my favorites. Like I like Skeleton Crew more than I liked Acolyte, but that's okay. Like, and I can say like that Return of the Jedi and Revenge of the Sith are very low in my movie rankings, but I still love them. Mm-hmm. And it's like I can say like, yeah, I have issues with both of these movies. But that's just one of those things that I think like I'm hoping that audiences can hopefully remove their little TikTok brain rot and understand these things. Yes. That like it's not like if I put Revenge of the Sith like bottom of the list of like a Star Wars ranking, it's not that I hate the movie. It's not that I don't understand Star Wars. And like otherwise, like if you put Rise of Skywalker at the bottom of your list, I like if I see you making a ranking video on TikTok, I'm like, all right, here we go. Rise of Skywalker at the bottom, Revenge of the Sith at the top. I know how this is going to play out.
No, it's always for me. Rise of Skywalker, swipe, Last Jedi, then I know Revenge.
It's like, yeah, Revenge of the Sith at the top. Yeah, it's. But all that being said, like, I think it's really cool that all of the stuff we're getting when it comes to like Andor and Andor, like when we were watching Andor season 2, I was saying like, it's almost weird to talk about like movie rankings and we don't include Andor because like I feel that Andor is the best thing since Empire Strikes Back. Like I genuinely hold that very true of like Rogue One was pretty much up there, but then like Andor really, really stepped it over the edge. Like there were things watching Rogue One that felt very Star Warsy, Star Wars goofiness. But Andor, I think really it changes so much and it makes it made A New Hope like I said earlier, like it is more my favorite now than ever. And it always has been my favorite. And it's just so cool to go back and watch A New Hope, like with the added context that Andor has given us with all the stuff with the Death Star and how big of a focus the Death Star was in Andor season 2. And to see that culminate through Rogue One and then end at A New Hope, like I said, like you almost want to cheer 10 times louder when you see the Death Star. But when the torpedoes go in, and you're like, that's Galen's design, and like Andor helped get that, like Cassian helped get that with Jyn, like, and all the stuff that Luthen did, and all the stuff that like happened on Gorman to make this a reality, and it's like, wow. Just that one moment. Yeah. Go ahead.
So something with tying all Andor and Rogue One and A New Hope together is really bringing back that we've lost in Star Wars a lot of times now is the hero's journey. Yeah. And within that you have like several heroes' journeys going on. You have you have everybody in Andor, you've got Jyn, you've got Luke and Han, and you've got all these heroes' journeys, which ever since the prequels, people want dark, people want like more depressing, of that. Yeah. And so you've lost in a lot of Star Wars, you've lost that hope. Yeah, we get it in Rebels, we get it here and there. But more often than not, like we start to see kind of that darker side of things. And so it's nice to have that refocus back on the heroes, even if it's not like the cleanest journey, like it puts that back into focus on what that journey is.
You can have darkness and you can have heroes falling, but it does feel good. Like when you watch Andor and like you see people do terrible things in service of the rebellion, like that they're trying to do the right thing. Like when you see Saw like die in Rogue One, like that like Saw fought tooth and nail, highest shit off of Rhydonium.
Nice.
Oh yeah,
deception.
Like watching. That was another scene. Not obviously not in New Hope, but like that was a scene rewatching Rogue One that I'm just like, Saw fought so hard for all of this, and like to have the Death Star take him out, like it's that like heartbreaking poetry. And I think it's when you see like that, to me was like the same reason, like you said, like you can have these like nuanced takes of the hero's journey, but like someone like Luthen, like to me the hardest thing to watch was Luthen, like Clea pulling the plug on Luthen, like
Oh God,
bawling, just gut wrenching to watch. But then like again, tying this back to A New Hope, when you see them going in, even just going into the Death Star, and like you realize like Luthen's sacrifice was worth it. Everyone's sacrifice was worth it. All of Rogue One's sacrifice was worth it. And it just makes like, I feel like A New One is just such a stellar conclude. It's like, even though it's the start of something, it's also become this immaculate conclusion to something else. Which is like, it's just so much fun to watch now. Like, I'm so excited. Like, I haven't rewatched it with Haley, and I'm like, yeah, I'll rewatch this again. It's my favorite Star Wars movie, and it's just so cool to watch it again.
You know what's interesting also when you tie in Andor, Rogue One, and A New Hope is how much focus it is on the women of that, because Andor season 2, Tony Gilroy basically was saying like, yeah, the Andor season 2 is about like 5 women. And that's the story. And then you go into Rogue One, same thing, Jyn. And then you go into A New Hope, and you've got Leia continuing that. Like, how much of that are these women such a part of this rebellion and at the heart of that? Like as Luke and Han are like fumbling around, Leia's like, I got this.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Get this walking carpet out of my way.
Yeah, like it is interesting because you're right, because you have Clea and Mon and Bix and Vel and then Jyn and then Leia, and like it is this very interesting story of all these women that put so much work into the rebellion, and like had their work and both their sacrifices not been contributed, like we would be nowhere. Han and Luke wouldn't have gotten those medals.
Oh, hell no. Nope.
Maybe those medals are consolation prizes.
Participation trophies.
It's like, good boys.
It's just like, good job, Han. You did the right thing. Here you go. Here's a medal.
Oh, yeah. And the credits, we're going to need those back.
I got to, a few months ago at Prop Store, I got to be this close to Luke's medal from A New Hope. It was like right here in my face. And
that's cool.
Got to touch Chewie's bowcasters. Amazing.
There's a bit of headcanon for me that like there had to have been a speech at that ceremony on Yavin, commemorating Cassian and Jyn and Luthen and Galen and Mon and Cinta and everyone, right? Like there's like a headcanon that like after they gave the medals, Leia gave like an incredible speech and Mon Mothma came out and
or it might have been before the guys even came out.
I can imagine being like having Leia or Mon have a speech about like the sacrifices and the remembrance of all these people, and that it's their sacrifices are leading us to new things and new people joining the rebellion, and then enter like Luke, Han, and Chewie, as kind of like the new hope.
They're the new generation of the rebellion that's going to take down the Empire. The Cassian, Jyn, and Luthen and the people from Andor and Rogue One laid the path. They paved the road for people like Luke, Han, and Leia to walk through. And like I think it's such a beautiful story. And it's, like I said, it's so cool that the beginning of something has also become the conclusion to something.
I don't even know. I don't even know if it's the conclusion, because I feel like some of these characters, Clea, Val, we'll get stories.
Wilman.
Sure, I think that
I think that there's a reason why it is open ended for some of these characters, because there are possibilities for them to tell stories that are within the universe.
Sure, I'm more speaking to I had called it earlier, like the Death Star saga. Whereas like the conclusion of the planning, the building, and the destruction of the Death Star, like that story it starts in Andor and concludes in A New Hope, but also there is a story that also starts in A New Hope, and that is the new generation of the rebellion, which is funny to say because it's like the new generation, but also the old generation. But no, it's cool how they did it. And what I, as much as I love the prequel trilogy, part of me hopes that like Andor and Rogue One really ushers in a new fan base that is like, I need to know more about Luke, Han, and Leia. Like Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Padme are cool and all, but Luke, Han, and Leia, they're the interesting ones.
For me, when it comes to like, I've been going through a lot of the Legends books, and by the way, I just finished the entire X-wing series with.
You only need the first like 4, but yeah.
I know. I still did Wraith Squadron, but you know, I'm a completist.
One Stackpole's gone. It's just like it's kind of like Brian Herbert. It's like you don't need this.
But something for me, like with the Disney era of things, is how they've had to avoid certain areas and certain timelines. Mm-hmm. Where like when it came to the Legends books, is that you could like just anything after Return of the Jedi, go for it, you know, or anything before a certain time, like you write whatever you want. And so that caution and that care and like having to like just like plant little things here and there. And now with the show like Andor, I think now like it's really like opening up more doors more than we can just have. And like with Luke, Han, and Leia, we just have comics. That's what we have in canon, really. And and I like them. They're enjoyable, but like that's what we've got. We barely have any books with them. In it, so it'd be nice to like be able to explore more of that time period and more interest in them.
Do you think that with Dave's movie, it'll be kind of like a adaptation, or not one to one, but it will take elements of Heir to the Empire?
I think Dave's pulling from certain things. I think he's pulling a little bit from Legacy of the Force for like season 2. Of Ahsoka, most likely with Abeloth, or something like it. He pulls a lot from Legends, like he, but basically, kind of the sound of it is like everything's culminating to that, and we'll see kind of like at the conclusion of Mando and Grogu, like where some of the characters are. But that's that conclusion of Mando and Grogu is that. But we'll see some of these characters like leading into it. But now with Ahsoka season 2, when you're bringing in Akbar versus Thrawn, you've got Ezra back with his old family, and then you got other things opening up. I think there's a lot of possibilities to have elements of that. I think it's going to start in Ahsoka season 2, though. I think that's where we're going to get our start.
I honestly, I know Mando and Grogu is going to be kind of viewed as like, oh, this is what kind of started like the movies for the like what Dave is setting up. I've always seen it as like Ahsoka season 1, Mando, Grogu. I guess Ahsoka season 2 is kind of like 0.5 in there, been like Dave's movie as like the trilogy, because like Ahsoka season 1 feels like a beginning of a trilogy to me. Like tonally feels like A New Hope, Force Awakens, Phantom Menace, where it's like we're building that beginning of that trilogy.
I have a feeling Ahsoka season 2 is going to completely shift gears.
I think so too, and this is where Ewan as Obi-Wan back propaganda starts, because I think that's going to happen.
I would disagree with Luke and agree with Nick. I think it's going to shift gears. I think they're going to try and start connecting more threads. I think we will probably see more First Order stuff start to pop up in Ahsoka season 2. I kind of like what Nick was saying is like, I would like to see more of Luke, Han, and Leia and how they kind of bridge that gap between the originals and the sequels. And while I want to see more original stories, I want to see new characters or characters that have recently come into fruition. I'm not against having like Alden Ehrenreich come back. It's been a couple of years. He can continue the lineage of Han Solo. I have no problem with that. I think
I'll even take an animated show.
I was
sure. Agreed.
Like no disrespect to Maul Shadow Lord, but like I feel like it's time we move on from the Clone Wars.
It's been time.
It's been time. Like I'm not to be like a big proponent of like other people's ideas. But, like I really like Chaco's pitch for like a Luke show like animation, like where we're following Luke building his new Jedi Order, and then we intercut like in the episode, like it begins with Rey finding something of like Luke's lineage, and then we flash back to Luke.
Kind of like kind of like an arrow, like how Arrow does it. Like they have it's a continuation where it's the opposite though of what you're saying though, Hereth. Yeah. It's a Luke story that flashes forward to Rey reading about the adventures.
Yeah, and then that could connect in the new Jedi Order, like where
absolutely.
Like you don't need it. Like you can get everything in the movie, but like if you watch like the show, you'd be like, oh, this is this. Oh my god, like little like Blup Shadow like Easter egg type things. But like I've been a big proponent of like doing an animated show. I think that's the perfect medium to do the original trilogy. I do agree with Chase. Like I think it's time that we do bring back Alden. I think we should just bring in the actor who's been doing the deep fake for Luke, and I think it's time to get a new Leia actress. I know Luke's going to take Leia, and it's like I think we should have that in Dave's movie.
The hard thing is though is that they've cut back on live action shows because streaming shows aren't profitable.
Yeah,
and that's I mean we're seeing that in the streaming industry entirely. So live action shows are going to be harder where animation has more of that possibility currently.
And it does depend on the animation, because we've seen in some circumstances where animated stories and shows can be more expensive than live action shows. It's the exception, not the rule. But as animation gets better and like doing live action becomes a little easier, like we are starting to see that flip. You've definitely seen it in like certain anime and stuff like that, where it's like the budgets for something like Jujutsu Kaisen is insane. And now we have things like
War of the Rohirrim.
Yeah, and then you look at something like Andor or Acolyte, where like these budgets are
insane,
astronomical. Like, and it's one of those things. Like, I get that Star Wars and like you said, like War of the Rohirrim, Lord of the Rings, these are never going to be cheap productions. Like,
absolutely not.
Things will have to be made from the ground up. You can't use, even in animation, you can't just use stock house asset. You have to build something from the ground up to make it Star Wars. So it's like, that's the nature of the beast of these like very fantastical worlds. But all that being said, like I want to see more stories, with original characters, and I would love to see other characters come in, even if even if it's Alden coming in to voice Han Solo, if it's Sebastian Stan coming in to voice Luke Skywalker, cool. I'm fine with all of that.
Like, let's create the bridge between animation, live action, and creative vision going forward.
Mm-hmm. But I also agree, like, A New Hope to Return of the Jedi is a beautiful story, and it's iconic, and it's lasted as long as it has because of how genuinely good it is. We can sit here and poke fun at all the holes, and Rogue One is a movie to cover a plot hole. Like, sure, we can do that all day, but like, I'm ready to. I don't want to ever move past these characters because I love them, but I don't need them to have the spotlight anymore, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. I will always take a Luke cameo. Like, I can't remember who said it. I'm a fan and I like to be serviced. Give me Luke Skywalker in a hallway. I'm always going to enjoy it. Are you crazy? Like watching the Mando hallway preview in the AT-AT, and I'm like, yep, sick, awesome, sign me up, great, love it.
Popcorn in hand, let's go.
Say what you want. This looks fun.
I have a New Hope side tangent story that has nothing to do with any of this.
Go for it.
If that's okay. So I had a chance to talk to Anthony Daniels for a while on his own at Star Wars Celebration. Like, it was after Celebration was done, and we were out like with drinks, me and friends, and like Anthony Daniels was there, and like he eventually like came over to us, and we were chatting for a long time, and I got him alone for several minutes, and I had like one particular question to ask, and it was about A New Hope. There's a scene where he's getting out of the bath. He's at the Lars homestead.
Oil bath.
And you see him like wiping himself off with the cloth, and he's wiping his codpiece in the background behind Luke's head. I don't know if you've ever watched this, but you'll never be able to unsee it. So I asked him what the real story behind that was. Because I wanted to know, because I had heard like rumors of like he was upset with like George Lucas or something. But I was like, what is the real story? And the real story is, it's much simpler. Is that based on like his whole costume, right? Like he can't see anything, first of all. Like he can't see anything, and he has no mobility. And this is the first movie that he's doing with this. And what ended up happening in the scene is like Mark Hamill like kind of grabbed his wrist and put the cloth in it, right? Like that was like Mark helped him like know like, okay, I have a cloth in my hand. But George Lucas, being the lack of director he is for actors, George Lucas being infamous about not directing people, but basically Anthony Daniels was like, I'm not being directed. I'm standing here. I just got out of a bath and I have cloth. I guess I clean myself off. And so the whole thing is like, he's got no ability. He's cleaning himself off, but he's like in a suit and he can't feel where that is. He has no concept to what he's wiping off. So it wasn't until like later when he's like seeing this thing that he actually like sees what was happening and what it was, because he had no idea. It's just kind of like, I'm just doing a thing that robots do. I don't know, but that's the whole thing behind that. It's like,
that's amazing.
Completely clueless.
I love that. Yeah. Also, props to C-3PO for having the best wipe in Star Wars, where they just pick him up and the screen wipes with his torso. Because clearly they didn't. There was nothing left. Like it was just one of those things. Like, yeah, this is just half a prop.
Thank you, Marshall Lucas and team, for giving us all those wipes.
Yeah.
No, like to wrap it up, like A New Hope to me has always been, like I've said multiple times, it's like, it is like the full embodiment of Star Wars to me. Like it is like, I understand people like, oh, you should watch it in chronological order. And I'm like, you should really start with A New Hope. Like you really, really should. I think we're now at a point where you could maybe start someone with Rogue One or Andor, if they're a person that likes to watch TV shows and binge watch TV shows, like, oh, maybe you should start with Andor. But generally, like, I think for me, this solidified, because like I know some people have like started with the prequels and like they've become really big fans, and that's great. But I'm like, A New Hope is Star Wars. Like,
if somebody asked me what my most meaningful Star Wars of all time is, that would be A New Hope.
Yeah,
like the one that means the most to me would be A New Hope.
It has the most heart and it has the most impact of any of the Star Wars films. And I think that's what I love about it the most, is just how good it is at being so many things at once. And I remember like a year or two ago, I made a video about like, what's the one scene that every Star Wars fan can agree on, of like, it's a good scene and there's like nothing wrong with the scene. It's the twin sun scene. Yeah. Like it really is. Like there's not a Star Wars fan out there that would say that's a bad scene.
No.
Like, Nick, are you about to just destroy this?
No.
You smirked, and I was like, "Oh my god, do you hate the twin sun scene?"
Nick hates the fours.
The binary sunset music is like the most. God. Like if you're a Star Wars fan and you don't get like choked up every time
every time
that plays, like, do you like Star Wars?
So everybody says that Marshall Lucas like carried the film. I'd have to say the same thing for John Williams. That score does so much for that film.
Yeah, I mean, George Lucas says that.
I think that, and if you haven't seen the ILM documentaries out there, like the team that did the special effects and especially the sound effects, I mean, it's like when you're watching this, and like this is the other thing that like grinds my gears, and we'll kind of wrap it up after this. Yeah, is when people talk about the prequels or the sequels or the Disney slop, and I'm just like, did y'all clearly didn't grow up on Mystery Science Theater, like where like all the Star Wars clones that were out there that like clearly missed the mark on special effects, on music, on sound effects, on costuming. Like the sound when the Death Star operator pulls the lever and you get the, and like that is a sound effect that like rivals modern sound effects today. And,
Yeah,
like,
Ben Burtt was in his bag.
Like the sound of the TIE fighters, the sound of the lights, like when Luke lights that lightsaber up, and like the remote and everything, like the costumes, and like obviously a lot of this was done on a pretty small budget, comparatively, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like the sound effects, the visuals, everything about this movie, and like when you look at how it was made and you look at how well, even watching the despecialization, how well this movie holds up today. Like, sure, you can totally see the rotoscoping. Sure, you can totally see that X-Wing is totally put onto another piece of film. Like, yes.
Oh, you can see the optical lines, but who cares?
Sure,
It's a
like
movie from 1977.
Right, like when you see a rogue leader go or a gold leader go down on the Death Star, it's like, yep, that is a piece of plastic that had a firework on top of it. Like, sure, these things are true, but like it still to this day looks great. It feels great. It hits all the right notes, and it's just one of those things, like having a movie that I think on its own did all these things so well, and then you introduce things like Andor and Rogue One that enhance it even further, is just a testament to like how important Star Wars is. Like Tony Gilroy grew up as a fan of Star Wars, and it is so cool. Like, I mean, Diego Luna was a fan of Star Wars, like growing up, like, and it's so cool to yeah, it's so cool to see like this new generation of people. Because I remember seeing someone say something like, "Oh, one of the issues is that fans are making things, not creatives," and I'm just like, the fans have a lot of the passion to make this stuff, and I think that shows really well in things like Andor and things like Skeleton Crew. This was clearly like a really thought out fan project of people who just genuinely love Star Wars.
I was talking to Marty Matulis, who is Pirate Vane, and he was on that set, and he was just talking like, just everybody on that everybody's a fan. Whether you're in costume or you're behind the scenes, everybody is a Star Wars fan.
The friend that I was talking about at Lucasfilm, he was saying he's been there since Mando season 1, and he said like, yeah, during Mando season 1, you definitely had a couple people who were there like contractually, or they're like trying to, they're not that they hated the project, but like the passion wasn't there. But he's like, being on the set of The Acolyte, being on the set of Skeleton Crew, is just like, there's not a single person in this crew, in the production team, that like doesn't have a really great story about how much Star Wars impacted them. And like go ahead.
Which is funny because funny enough, not to bring this back to the wedding, but we met with the person who's gonna marry us, right? Mm-hmm. Big Star Wars fan. Not a big fan of the Disney stuff, which is funny, but they mentioned that they loved Skeleton Crew, and it was like
great show.
And he was like, it was like the Goonies in Star Wars, and that it was something that I really liked, because he didn't really like the Acolyte, which is neither here nor there. But it is fun to hear fans.
So we're all wearing Acolyte t-shirts to the wedding, right?
Yeah, 100%.
I wouldn't recommend it, but that's your call. But no,
it is directed by Leslie Henlin shirts. Like, let's fucking go.
It is interesting to see that we can.
Is your wedding going to be called The Virgins?
Oh, geez, no.
You're getting married on Brendok.
Oh, good Lord.
You're going to have the little symbols.
Yeah, we're going to have the symbols and everything.
Yeah, we're going to start to
we all wear different directed by shirts, and they're all Disney era stuff.
Oh, jeez.
It is cool though that you have like someone who is passionate in their own way about Star Wars. Because it's like, I think it is. It's like, what I think is great is that, like I said, like the fact that we're all here and we know each other. We're fortunate enough to all meet each other in real life at one point or the other, and like we've gotten along for so well. And it's because of this movie specifically. It's because of the original Star Wars. Like, and it's crazy because like Luke, obviously, or Nick, you were saying you were born right before Empire came out, but not before, the original. And it's like, it's something before all of our times that like changed everything. And this movie changed filmmaking, like just in general. Like the original Star Wars changed everything for filmmaking. So So yeah, it's cool. To me, it's so cool to have like a movie like this that I've loved. I couldn't even tell you. I was like 4 or 5 when I first saw this. So we're talking like 90, 92, 93, maybe when I first saw Star Wars. And like such a huge impact on everything. And it's like, it's so cool to like, that's what I love about Andor and Rogue One is it just makes such a great movie even better.
For sure.
Yeah. But any closing thoughts? Any final feelings? A New Hope now, has it changed in your rankings after Andor?
It's still top 5. It's not top 3 for me, but it's top 5.
Yeah, Luke has the lowest on his list. Kick him off the podcast. I'm kidding.
Disgusting.
I mean, like I said, the original. What's that?
We'll discuss later. Go ahead, Nick.
It didn't because the original trilogy was so high up there for me to begin with. It doesn't change anything for me. It just expands on a time period that is the most meaningful to me. It gives me more of that I haven't gotten in a long time. I mean, there was Rogue One, and before that, it had been so long. So I think it just adds more for me to consume from that time period to really just dive in and like have those crazy binge fests.
For sure.
Yeah. Like I said, it's always been my favorite. It's further solidified itself as my favorite after Andor. I stand by that. I do think that Rogue One is the best Star Wars movie, but A New Hope will always be my favorite. Because I think the way that Rogue One was made, beautiful film. But yeah, no. Anything else? Go ahead.
The last thing I have to say is the Force will be with you always.
And Han shot first.
Hell yeah!
Yeah, we didn't even touch on that.
We don't need to. We don't need to touch on it. We don't need to touch on it because it is a known fact of the universe that Han shot first, and I don't need Han digitally moving his head to the side.
You mean the most over thing in the Star Wars fandom?
God, do you know? You said this, and I swear we'll close on this. The satisfaction, the gratification, knowing that Jabba's not showing up in the new.
Oh yeah, because I made that joke. I was like, because we were watching it, and I had it synced up on my end, and I was like, oh, thank God.
It's so bad.
Jabba.
It's so bad. It's so bad.
The mystery of Jabba lives
again.
I
mean, the original cut of it is even worse.
He's a dude. He's a dude in a fur coat.
It's just a dude. It's a dude being a guy.
Just shoot Greedo and move on. Just
that's it. That's all you need. You
just save Jabba for Return of the Jedi where he belongs.
Matthew Wood joked recently because he's one of the Star Wars people. I think it was Matthew Wood, like joking that we're gonna have the 15th version of like Sean, like which version it is. Yeah, I'm gonna see him at Rebel Scum Con. See if we can get like that to be reverted. That'd be great.
Oh my God!
Bring it back.
Yeah.
Bring back the Han cut.
Oh, I'm good. Originals forever. Don't need special editions.
I hope for the 50th anniversary in a couple years.
I really hope that they show the original.
Can they just get approval for like in England to show the unaltered versions? Like Disney made an exception for. I'm like, okay, if Disney can make an exception for the UK, they can make an exception for the 50th, right?
I really hope for the 50th anniversary. And I said, like,
going?
if they, we're going to Celebration. I was saying, if they're showing Star Wars at the Chinese theater, like the original, I will, even if it's not
50 years later, the same place it premiered.
If they do it, I'm there. I'm there.
There too.
Like, no way I won't. I won't miss it. Like, that'd be cool. But Luke, where can we find you on the internet?
You can find me at Jedi Master Eggs, and you can find me at the Pod Ones on all social medias. Also, this was our 150th episode. Believe it or not.
Hey,
look at that.
We're 100 more older than Star Wars.
Damn. That's really depressing when you think of it. But yeah, you can check us out on here every Thursday. I don't really know what we're gonna be doing. We've kind of tossed around doing some things.
Talk about doing a book club.
I love some things.
Mask of Fear is definitely going to be an episode that we do post wedding. So it gives Hereth and Char a little bit more time to read that book and talk about it. But I do know for the Thursday of the wedding, none of us will be available, so we will have some guest hosts on.
Trials of the Jedi comes out that week. I know some High Republic
That's what I was thinking, is that they have a conversation about that book if everybody's read it.
The finale of the High Republic.
The finale of the High Republic.
I'm so worried.
Yeah, it's gonna be emotional.
There's like 2 characters that are safe and nobody else is.
But
one of those characters is Yoda.
Yeah,
and the other ones are Nestor, because Nestor got that plot armor, baby.
Yeah, it is gonna be crazy. But yeah, we might do like a stream of Battlefront or something again for next Thursday. I don't really know what the plan is. We'll kind of figure that out offline, but yeah, it's kind of what we're thinking.
For Light and Life.
Yeah, for sure.
Rest in peace, High Republic. Hereth, where can we find you on the interwebs?
On the interwebs, of course, you can find me at Hereth Productions on TikTok, Instagram, and Threads. And of course, you can find me here at the Pod Ones Podcast every Thursday to talk about more Star Wars, baby.
More Star Wars. Well, you can find me at Forward in the Black on pretty much all social media, and I will be talking with David Xanatos of 1138 tomorrow on its Fanbox to talk more about Andor, since we missed a couple weeks, and I'll also be on Wednesdays on the Sill Pill podcast with AJ at the Dork Place. But Nick, thank you so much for coming on here.
Pleasure. Codename _Fulcrum that you see here is my TikTok handle, and if you add Nick _Codename _Fulcrum, that's my Instagram. So those are the 2 main places.
I don't think I follow you on Instagram on my
How
personal.
dare I don't know if I follow everyone here.
Most people don't follow my actual Instagram.
You don't follow Nick throwing people into chaos at Galaxy's Edge and all his friends.
Yeah,
it's like his favorite pastime.
But no,
have you met my Resistance friend?
He did that to me.
Is there any?
Have you met this Jedi? I'm like, no, the fuck, Nick.
Hey, Kylo Ren's got to pay attention to somebody else rather than me. I'm just.
It's okay. I got nose ghosed by a First Order stormtrooper last time I was at Galaxy's Edge, so I'm good by being
I
humiliated.
stared down Kylo Ren last time I was in Galaxy's Edge as Obi-Wan, believe it or not. That was kind of funny.
But no, Nick, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for talking about A New Hope and other Star Wars. Yeah, it's talking about all the other Star Wars shenanigans going on. It's always great to talk to you. We'll have to have you back on at some point. Maybe for Mask of Fear. Who knows? But I think that'll call it. Thanks to everyone in the chat. Thanks to CJ and Brooke and Obi-Shawn and Ryan. Ryan says bring back Fur Coat Jabba, and that's how you get blocked on the Pod Ones podcast. Have a good night.
No!